Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Jitsi Community Call. Let's start with the usual updates. What do we have to report this time? Damien, Jonathan, Risto, anything you guys would like to share? Boris, think about it.
As we, sorry, man. So as we mentioned previous time, I remember we were about to release the new stable version. We did that. There were a few glitches here and there, so we needed to do an update of it. But it's out there. Also, the latest Jigasi is pushed to stable. So that's that.
That is great to hear. Boris, it sounded like you wanted to add something as well.
Yes, with the changes to Chikofo around removing a component and another refactoring, there were multiple things that we broke. I broke mostly. Apologies for that. And as far as I know, everything but one thing is fixed, and I'm making a PR right now. And it's a one-liner, so it should be in very soon.
That's great to hear. Thanks. Any other updates, team? In that case, I'd like to add one. Please don't forget that we now have jazz.8x8.vc available as a service. Let me type that here. People often ask, how is it we can help with regard to keeping Jitsi going. So, if you're using Meet Jitsi in some way for your business, please consider switching over to Jazz 8x8 VC, which is fully productionized, Jitsi as a service. So you can embed it. You can get webhooks with various events that happen during the call. You can get access to the recordings in a system-friendly way. You can get whatever that's supposed to mean. Well, you're just going to get a webhook with the recording. You're going to get transcriptions if they existed, and you have more functionality. So again, jazz.8x8.vc. And I'll switch that shortly on my screen as well. This is what keeps the free things going as well. All right. Now let's open the microphone for the floor. Any questions or comments this week?
There was a small update coming offline from Seoul. SDK 3.0 got released on Friday with a new eventing system and a new event. Just participant join live actions can also be triggered now, such as hang up and audio mute. More to come. This is on the mobile side of things. Sorry for the interruption.
Well, not at all. That wasn't an interruption. Thank you, Sue, for sending us your update. And let's keep the mic open. Are there any questions, comments from the community? Yep, listening.
Hi, yes, two questions relating to the video bridge. The first one being, is anybody else using the enabled shutdown hooks in the video bridge to basically put it into a slowly draining state? And first of all, is anybody using it?
Graceful shutdown, or?
Yes, exactly, graceful shutdown.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
Okay, so others are using this also. We were trying to verify that we're getting clean drains on them over time. The second thing that I was curious about is we were playing around with increasing the bit rate of the audio codecs, and it seems like we end up with the video bridge in a state where it starts to increase memory drastically until it just sort of quality drops away. Are there any, has anybody else reported or noticed issues with higher bit rates, increasing memory consumption in the video bridge significantly? It's a general question, not to one person necessarily.
Jonathan,
It's somewhat
Boris?
expected that the memory use will increase with a higher bit rate because of the
Yes.
memory pool that we have. But if it goes out of control, then that's not expected.
That's not expected. Nobody else has seen this issue then.
No. I mean, we haven't.
I mean, I saw there was a. Is it your? I saw there's a something that somebody posted on the GitHub about this. Is this also you, or is that?
Well, it was somebody else, but I was following up because that was the issue I was investigating.
This
also.
is 1396 on JPV.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we might be able to give. I mean, we haven't seen it, so.
Okay.
Do you have an easy way to increase the bitrate in the client?
I believe you can just change the configuration in the in your conf.js.
And this is specifically the audio bit, right?
Yes. Audio bitrate with Opus encoding.
I will try to play with that. If you get a chance and you can get a heap dump from when it's using a lot of memory.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I believe we have a script that does that. That should be installed with the package, right?
Yeah, collect heap dumps or something like that.
Okay.
User shared video bridge, Jitsi video bridge.
Okay. Thank you. I'll look into that.
Any other questions?
I actually have another update I forgot about, which is about the bitrate controller changes. These are now merged in master, which means that clients can request from the bridge video constraints for specific endpoints via a new message. The new format is documented, and I'm going to paste the link here in the chat in a minute. But basically what this allows is more flexibility in the way bandwidth is allocated.
And these are probably things that we're going to use as in our future plans to make sure that video streams that are not currently displayed will not be sent from the bridge. So there's that. Are there any other questions?
I have 3 questions.
No, you can have 2 or 4. 3 is not.
Okay.
Tolerable. Let's start and we'll see how far we get.
I'm sure I'll get to 4 somehow.
Okay.
The first one is about screen sharing. So I noticed lately, or I was told by other people using it, that the screen sharing is not that good. And then I sat down and tried it on multiple instances from the same machines of the other people who were testing, and it was actually bad on all of them besides one, which was, interestingly, the FPS rate was on 5 instead of 30. On all the rest, it was on 30. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, the FPS should be very low, and it switches to a high FPS in only certain cases for desktop streaming. I believe one of these cases is when we do what I'm doing now. So when you combine video and screen share. And that, yes, that is a good way to crapify the quality. But it shouldn't be happening unless you have video on. Jaya, would you like to correct me on any of these things?
Yeah, I mean, same thing, whatever you said, like whenever we have the camera on, we do the 30 FPS, or it also depends on your deployment. If you have the cap screen sharing bitrate option on, that means we disable simulcast and we'll cap the bitrate to 500, and then we do only 5 FPS. But then if you have simulcast on for screen sharing as well, then yeah, I think the client sends, Chrome sends 2 layers, one with 5 FPS and the other with the 30 FPS. So if you want higher FPS, you would have to go into that mode. But on Meet Jitsi, we don't do it by default.
Am I mistaken in thinking there's an upper limit? You can configure an upper limit too to throttle it so it doesn't climb all the way up?
Yeah, there is a min and max desktop sharing frame rate config. I can send you how to configure that. We have a min and a max, and you can control it.
I've seen that. That's great. But I was wondering why it's not a default, because I think I saw on, I was pretty sure I saw it on meet.jit.c as well, this exact issue. And it wasn't with turning on the video. That I also noticed that when you turn on the video, then, I mean, the video while screen sharing, then of course you get 30. So, but maybe I'll test again, send a screen share or something.
Yeah, on Meet Jitsi, we've set it to 5 FPS without the camera. That's the default that we've configured. Yeah, that is what we would expect to see.
Okay. Question number 2 is, I've seen a test platform which is done really well, and I wanted to ask if anyone knows of an open source variant of that. It kind of like goes through, it's a French instance, it kind of like goes through all the stages of like, is your camera, like, do you have access to your camera, to microphone, all that stuff, and then it starts the Jitsi call. So if anyone knows.
I'm curious why you would want that, given that now we have the pre-join screen, which is kind of supposed to serve that purpose.
It was very interesting. It kind of, maybe I'll send a link in a second. It kind of did like everything in a really interesting way, that it just went to the next step automatically without you having to click on anything. And then it also has a nice UI, and I don't know, it just felt more intuitive. But I'll send a link.
All right, yeah. That's I'm not aware of one, but I'd love to see this one. In the meantime, there's a question here about how do you list participants above 20. There's a button right next to the name of the call that when you click on it, you can see all the participants and their speaker statistics.
You can also just scroll down.
I mean, yes, that is actually something that we probably need to fix, because I've noticed that people were not seeing this very often. So I guess we need to make it more obvious that there's something to scroll for. Oh, that's Renater. Our old friends from Renater. They did that.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, I mean, having friends is a good thing in general. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it's kind of a product decision, I suppose. And you know, when you can, this is a university organization, Renater, so maybe they'll be just open to giving you what they have and putting it on GitHub or something. Personally, I am not a fan of multi-click processes, because they're just a way to get people to fall out at various stages. And the problem of making sure that your network, microphone, and camera are working is supposed to be addressed by our pre-join screen, as I already pointed out. But I also understand that you might find the other process better. I get so that's what I meant. It's kind of a product choice, I suppose. Yeah, just reach out to them. They actually sometimes there must be some contact addresses there. I suspect they might be open to open sourcing that.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. The last question is just out of interest, the encryption done on Jitsi, does that slow? Does that not slow? Does that
Yes,
increase the
adds CPU.
consumption?
Yes.
Yeah, not on the server, but on the client.
Yes, not on the server. It doesn't change anything on the server. It does add a second layer of encryption on the client. So, yep, absolutely.
Is there a way to turn that off, or is
it's off by default?
Okay.
Sorry,
So-
to be clear, because this is going on YouTube,
Yeah.
on the network encryption is never off and cannot be turned off. Jitsi allows you to turn on a second layer of encryption, which is never decrypted on the server, right? And the only difference between the first layer and the second layer is that this. Someone forgot to mute. So the only difference is that the second layer is never decrypted on the server, but on the network, essentially nothing changes. That is the bit, that second layer, that can be turned on and off. Does that make sense, Hagai?
Yeah, I'm not too sure if I understood everything. There's like
Okay.
one.
Any WebRTC call encrypts stuff on the network.
Okay. Okay.
And so does Jitsi. So what happens in a Jitsi call is that you send your audio and video, they get encrypted before you put them on the network. They arrive at the server, right, where they have to be decrypted. The DTLS SRDP layer has to be removed so that they can be re-encrypted then within the context of every other participant. So technically, the server has access to the data. Now, the Jitsi video bridge doesn't do anything with it, right? But in theory, there's this potential now that technically it's possible for the server to, access the data. When you turn on end-to-end encryption from within the user interface in Jitsi, that doesn't change anything on the existing encryption. That still proceeds exactly the same way as before. But now the actual data itself has been encrypted a second time, so that when decryption happens on the server, the actual data remains protected by this second encryption. Does that make better sense?
Yeah, but that would mean like an even higher consumption of battery.
Indeed, it does.
Is there a way to remove? Yeah.
Oh, but I mean, in practice, the battery used by the encryption is fairly low compared to just media encoding, because encryption is on modern CPUs there's hardware support for most of the encryption, so it should be it's an increase, but it's a relatively lightweight increase.
Okay, interesting. Is there a way to remove the DTLS, the first layer encryption?
No.
I'm
No.
going okay. There's no way to do that. That's a WebRTC thing. Okay.
Yeah.
You can ship your own browser, and potentially you could do that. The other thing to mention here is that, even that first layer of encryption, like if you look at your CPU consumption, like what we've seen is that by far the biggest hog of resources, the thing that makes you, that drains your battery, that makes your fan spin, is rendering, apparently. And just the video rendering uses a lot of CPU, uses a lot of GPU, which Brian was telling me the other day that he had done some testing where that appeared to impact fan utilization the most. So as Jonathan said, whatever you can get, whatever you can save with encryption by disabling it, it isn't really that much.
So this basically means that in comparison to other services, there's not much of a difference.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing in our tests as well. So when we compare ourselves to, the browser version of Microsoft, Facebook, Google Meet, all of those are performing about the same level. Now, Signal seems to be performing with higher requirements, which is curious, I suppose. They do use Jitsi on the back end, but they have their own
interesting.
client. Yeah. So I think they might be doing their own encryption and maybe not using the ones available in hardware. I don't know. I should stop speculating because I really don't know. But yeah, it's like the services that I mentioned perform about as well as Jitsi in terms of CPU.
But that's only on the browser.
Only in the browser. So if you take one of the native ones, if you look at the Zoom call, that seems to be using less resources. But you have to understand that the pipeline for delivering video from the moment that packets arrive in the network and show up on your screen, that pipeline is much shorter with Zoom. And now, this is all due to the complexity of having to do that sort of stuff in a browser. If you room a Zoom conference in a browser, the performance would actually be worse for other reasons. But like in the browser, for example, when packets arrive, they arrive at one place, and then you have separate processes that are handling the different parts of the WebRTC, pipeline or filter graph or however you want to call it, and the communication between them happens with IPC, inter-process communication, and then there's a lot of generic support for various things that have to work for all things HTML. So running a video call in a browser is a much harder thing than running it in a dedicated app, which is why it ends up costing more. Now, in theory, users should be getting a better experience with that because you can do all sorts of HTML-y things in the browser. Whether that's happening or not is, everyone's opinion. I personally rather enjoy Jitsi calls.
Yeah, me too. I don't actually like the, what's it called again? The preview page. I like it when you just jump in and you just straight away, but someone else
disable that. You can disable that with a config parameter.
Nice. I'll get to that sometime.
You can just look at config.js on Jitsi and look for pre-code join screen. Enable pre-code. You'll find it.
I'll find it. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
And you have a message from Jaya in the chat that tells you how you can control the capture frame rate for screen share.
Yep. Thanks. I saw that, but I for some reason it was on meet.c as well, and I was really confused why it's still bad quality.
Right. Yeah. There's a question from Leonard. Was the recording state event listener ever included in the latest release for the iframe API? You mean in the latest stable release or the iframe API that's running on Jitsi? Yes. Yes, to which one? The reality is actually, I don't know the answer to that question. So, Damien, do you have an opinion here?
I'm not sure for which change is that, so I'm trying to figure out right now.
Okay. Yeah, Leonard, if you could paste the actual event that you're interested in, that might help. So Abata is asking for a VP9 update. Jaya and Jonathan, if you want to jump in.
And I think I was looking over the VP9 patch. As far as I know, all the VP9 specific stuff is done, and I believe the client-side code to switch codecs as needed is done. Looking over the code, there might be still one issue where I need to double check that if you switch back from VP9 to VP8, that the shaping is done properly. So that might need some testing, but as far as I know, other than that, we just have to get around to merging it because it's a pretty big merge. So, we don't want to destabilize the rest of the system. But as far as I know, it should be basically working. But hopefully we'll get that landed soon.
Yeah, and the client-side work has all been merged, and we had some members of the community try it out where they have a VP9 call and then add a Safari client, and then they were able to verify that it switches to VP8, and then when Safari is gone, and then the call switches back to VP9. So yeah, the client-side work is done.
Thank you, guys. Any other questions?
Hey, good morning. I have one question.
Good morning.
Regarding libjitsi, I wanted to know if there was a way to change the background of the video participant, like you could have on Google Meet or something like that.
No, not currently. We did experiment with that a little bit. We had a blur effect. We actually still do.
Oh, and we can use it with libjitsi Meet?
Yes, I think so. Not sure. Can it be used from libjitsi Meet? Now you can see what the effect that it does, though. My frame rate dropped by half probably, and my CPU went up 4 times. It's a very, very expensive thing. We're trying to tweak it and see if we can do better. But Jaya, can this be used?
No, it can be used with libjitsi Meet. Like the effect and all what we are doing with the canvas and all is implemented in Jitsi Meet, but not in libjitsi Meet.
Okay.
But you can take a look at the Jitsi Meet code and see if you could do something similar. I can copy the link here. I mean, I can paste a link in the chat so that you can take a look.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I was also wondering about the second feature. When you do the sharing, is there a way to put the participant as a thumbnail, on the bottom right or somewhere, while you see the desktop? Can we still see the participant showing up somewhere? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, we currently have that. Again, it's called the presenter effect, and it's implemented in Jitsi Meet. It's implemented as an effect, the same way we implement blur. So I can actually send you a pointer to how it's done in Jitsi Meet. So maybe you can do something similar.
Oh, okay, great.
This is what you meant, right, Fabrice?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, that's great. So that's a parameter. Okay.
That's doable from Jitsi Meet itself already. Just turn on your video after you share something.
Yeah. I guess if your video is not turned on, it won't work. I guess. Yeah. Okay. And so that's
even if it was turned on in advance, we turn it off when you share the screen. So you have to turn it on again in order for it to appear in the lower corner.
A lot of people don't notice it. That's the thing. I noticed that as well. A lot of people do. I keep on telling people that this is possible and it's amazing, but they don't think that it would be possible.
So that means you need to trigger some kind of pop-up so they accept the video in case when you switch to desktop also, right?
Desktop. That's when you get the pop-up, when you're picking the thing that you want to share. Then the next thing you do after you've selected what you want to share is to just go on and turn on your video again. That's all.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you for the answers.
You're most welcome. Any other questions?
One probably similar question to the
go ahead.
To the blur effect. One user had the idea that the video signal itself could be replaced with stickers, so that you could have yourself look as an animal, like a cat, just for some seconds. Are there any plans, or do you know any instance who is trying that effect, that you replace the video signal with something that you have on your desktop available, and not just
Yeah,
It's
you
just
could,
screen.
if you want a quick way to do it, you can do that with SnapCam. It allows you to do exactly that sort of stuff. And then it appears as a camera on your machine. So you just need to select that from within Jitsi. If you want that to be native functionality, I mean, it's doable. It's not currently possible, but it will have the same problem. So what is very expensive with the blur is recognizing the face or the body shape 30 times a second in a large resolution image. And, you know, whether you then apply a blur on the image or you replace it with a background, I guess isn't that big of a difference. Now, having to animate a cat to match your face, like sounds like something that would be quite expensive as well. So
yeah,
you know,
I would even have it more cheaply, just replacing the complete image with just another image, the video signal with another image, without any artificial intelligence in it.
I mean, if you're asking whether that's possible for users already, no, it isn't. We can share videos. I mean, that's not the same.
But this is basically just an avatar, isn't it? Isn't it just setting an avatar image?
It's more than an avatar. So my full screen is a cat, or that's what users would like to see, or an animal which I can choose from a list of stickers, in fact.
Right, but don't they expect that it would somehow map to your face mimics?
No.
And, well, then this should be fairly trivial to do. I don't think it would be that expensive if you're not going to recognize the face, but it's not possible without code changes.
Yeah. Okay,
Good
thank you.
screen.
So I think
I mean, why don't you just share your
nice
desktop?
effect, yeah.
Why don't you just share your desktop with a static with whatever image you want, and then there you go.
Yeah, it's too complicated for some users. They want to have a button and select an animal.
Right, but that's kind of what you're looking for, right? To essentially get to the same effect.
Yeah, I'm looking for. I just wanted to know if somebody has seen this already, or if anybody had the same idea, or if somebody is working on it. Then we would look at the code a little bit and see how we could work on that.
All right. Good luck.
I think the Snapchat solution would be the easiest for the users without changing the Jitsi code.
Well, they still have to install the Snapchat camera.
Yeah, but still, it might be doable. So I would suggest that you look into it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Last call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a quick question. I just written this in the chat, but let me repeat that. I was looking into just my custom parameters, for example, like stereo audio, and I found informal description at homepages, UCL IC UK page, which saying this parameter means this, and like config disable AEC or disable NS and another list of parameters. Is there any kind of official document which would describe each parameter in terms of like what is that for, what's possible values, true, false, or a number? Because there is a very unofficial page, and your colleague Boris shared a link to source code page which lists the variables but not the description of each of them. Thank you.
So now I'm afraid that there's... Sorry, go ahead, Boris.
I was going to say there's a bit of nuance there on what parameters in the config file are available and which ones are allowed to be overridden with URL parameters.
Yeah, that just would be nice. So essentially I was looking for, it's like how to establish a high quality stereo conversation. For example, both sides have stereo microphones or to share music, something like that. And then question was like, what other parameters except that are configurable from the URL line rather than from config on server side?
Right, so that's the list that I sent, but you can look at the config.js file itself, and it has some more documentation about their meaning and syntax.
Okay.
It's
We
still not
also have
perfect, though.
some of the parameters are also documented in the Jitsi handbook under the advanced user guide. I don't think it's a complete set, but probably we could continue to add things.
Oh, thank you.
And I linked that as well.
Yeah, I can see Aaron just shared this user guide advanced. Thank you very much, guys.
And some of them are documented in libjitsimate, which is used by Jitsi.
Thank you.
Also, Ron, great audio. Okay. Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining yet another week, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.